Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here for Advocacy at the Margins, Observing and Defending in Immigration Court. My name is Steve Allred, and I am the Director of Government Relations for the Church State Council. And unfortunately, Jerry Milan, who we had initially advertised would be facilitating our training today, is unable to be with us. She had some family emergencies come up, and so we want to keep her in our prayers. However, we have Danny Kwan with us, who is an attorney who practices in the immigration area, and he has graciously agreed last minute to step in and present today's topic. So we're very thankful he's here. I'm going to introduce Danny in just a minute. And before I do, I want to talk about why we are hosting this training. The Church State Council, of course, is the religious liberty ministry of the Pacific Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And some people might ask, well, why are we, discussing and training about how to help asylum seekers? And I think really it boils down to this, that as followers of Jesus, we are called to care about the least of these, those who are powerless, or at least have less power than maybe some of the rest of us do. And Scripture, of course, repeatedly commands us to speak up for the poor, the fatherless, the oppressed, and the foreigner, the stranger. And it's interesting in Scripture, as I was looking at the verses that talk about caring for the foreigner recently, I noticed that it's oftentimes these verses are paired with caring for the orphan and the fatherless all throughout Scripture. For example, Exodus chapter 23, verse 9, let me read it here. It says, "Do not oppress a foreigner, because you yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt." It goes on to say, I'm sorry, this is Exodus chapter 22. This is the one I was thinking of here a minute ago, and I said they are often paired together. "Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Do not take advantage of the widow or the fatherless. If you do, they will cry out to me, and I will certainly hear their cry." And these are just a couple of verses of many verses in Scripture where God speaks about himself actually taking up the cause of foreigners. And so we feel like, this is an issue that God cares about, clearly, according to Scripture. Additionally, as a ministry that deals with religious liberty, there are many folks who are coming here to the United States seeking asylum from persecution in their own country. And that is directly related to religious liberty, as well as to the issue of human rights. And so this really goes back, I think, to our mission as Christians. What are we here to do? We're here to represent Jesus. And in as much as we have done it to the least of these, we have done it to him. So let me bring Danny on. And Danny, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. And just for our viewers today, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself. But I want to say one thing. Thank you for doing this last minute, because I know I contacted you this last week when I found out Jerry wasn't able to be with us. And you were gracious, even though you have something going on today. I believe you're in the middle of a life and health. Well, tell us what you're doing. I think it's like a clinic, right?
Yeah, we're at Sac Central in Sacramento, and at Sac Central Church, and we're putting on a free dental vision clinic. So I'm part-time. I volunteer with Life and Health Network, their director, and we put on these clinics on weekends in churches together with the Northern California Conference. So we're here now. We have 20 dentists. We have 3 optometrists. We have helping over 300 people. It's pretty busy out there right now, but just in a quiet office here away from the crowds. But that's why I'm wearing a t-shirt. I would have dressed up a little bit more. But.
I mean, you were a man of many talents. Here you are running a health clinic, and then you're like, well, let me just step back in the office here, and I'm going to give a seminar on immigration, teach attorneys how to do this. So tell us a little bit about your career as an attorney. And I know that you have an interest in this area and a passion as well. So.
Yeah, it's actually appropriate that I'm doing this at Sac Central, because it was at these clinics that at one of these clinics a little over a year ago that they have a really strong refugee ministry here, and there were Afghanis who were asking me, pleading with me, begging me to help them, that they needed representation. There was all the pro bono attorneys are booked. There's no space, and even attorneys who charge money are booked. It's really crazy right now. And Afghanis are a refugee population that's very poor. They don't have rich relatives back home to send them money or anything like that. Work has been very hard to get. And so I was like, I don't know much about immigration law, but they were like, we just need an attorney. We can't do our final hearing without an attorney present. And we just need a warm body there. That they were literally just begging for that. So I said, well, let me try. And since then, I've slowly gotten into, doing more and more and more. I've done a few in-person, final hearings, and so like many of you, I just came into this because I wanted to help. Now, I have done immigration law in the past, usually with ministries like religious worker visas, work visas, family-based petitions, and in Canada, where I'm from, in the late '90s, I was doing immigration, but again, it was more like investment immigration, things like that. So this is all fairly new, but if you're an experienced attorney in almost any field, you should be able to help. And I think that's the big thing is we're attorneys, they need help.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so I'm looking forward to this because I personally want to learn and I would like to take on a case or two pro bono potentially in the future in this area. And just for our viewers to know, I want to say this at the beginning, I'll say it again at the end, and then Danny, we're going to turn the time over to you. The Church State Council actually helps to sponsor and host legal aid clinics around the Pacific Union. We're starting to do that. And so we're actually doing one in Oakland, California here in, I believe it's November. And so I'm going to put up my email here. Let's see if I can make this work. Oh, look at that. Cool. Little ticker on the bottom there. Yeah. So you can email me if you're interested in joining our volunteer attorney team. And this would include potentially helping or representing an asylum seeker. I would probably connect you with Danny in that, case, and Danny might be able to connect you with someone. And hopefully today's training would help with that as well. So, Danny, I'm going to go ahead and let you get started. I know that the two things that we advertised were, I think, observing in immigration court. You're going to talk about that very briefly, I think, and then you're going to get into actually how to represent in, asylum cases, and you'll give us more details on that. You can tell me, Danny, when you want me to put your slides up. Is that right now at the beginning, you think?
No, it's okay. I'll start with the first topic and then
Okay.
we'll move on. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll put the slides up when you tell me to. Otherwise, I'm going to turn the time over to you, and I'll be back on here at the end. Is that good?
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
So let me see if I can remove myself, and I'll let you.
Okay. Well, the first topic, which is in the courtroom, observing in the courtroom. Honestly, I've been in the courtroom a couple of times. It was near the beginning, about a year and a half ago. It was in Sacramento court and a San Francisco court. But since then, all the court appearances have been through WebEx online, and I think they prefer it that way. So you can help represent clients in almost any state, and so what I've observed too, when I went to the immigration court, is there's very few people in the courtroom. So I think family members are allowed, and of course the respondent, attorneys, but it's really not. It's not a big forum for people to go. It's not like a criminal court where you can just easily find it and go in. And so I don't know that this is really an issue these days. You're going to find that it's really convenient to be able to help people pro bono because you don't actually have to go to court. You can do most of this from home and over the internet. So that's, if anyone has any questions on that, I can maybe try to answer those questions. But I don't know that it's really a big issue these days to go into immigration court. If it's a big case, like some of the cases we're reading about, there may be observers, news, things that are more public in nature. But for most cases, it's probably going to be over WebEx and the court, and everyone's going to prefer that. A lot of times the government attorneys don't even come to the courthouse. They're at home representing the government from home. So you can feel comfortable about that. I've seen it evolve from WebEx was fairly new, to now people are like not even turning on their cameras. You can tell they're in their car, and the courts are fine with it. But you shouldn't do that, of course. You should stop, pull over, and be in a private area, be in your office if possible. But they've gotten really big into WebEx, and that's pretty much your courtroom these days. I just want to say, before I go into some of the more practical aspects of how you can start helping people as an attorney, that I feel, right now what we are seeing as immigration attorneys, and I think all of America, anyone who watches the news is seeing, is that ICE is busy trying to lock up people. It doesn't matter whether you have work authorization, you have a petition pending, they're locking people up. And when you look at the fact that the new budget that Trump recently passed has $75 billion set aside for ICE enforcement and the building of more detention facilities, and you consider that, for example, the new Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas costs $2 billion to build, you can build a lot of prisons for $75 billion. And so I believe where we're headed to is more and more people that are here in this country without status are going to be fighting their cases from behind bars. The judges are not allowed to give bond for any reason anymore. So people that are getting locked up are faced with judges that are just saying, I have no jurisdiction to grant bond. And I don't want to get into that, but they're citing case law that was developed during the first Trump administration to enforce that. It's not really case law, but anyways, the judges are not letting anyone out on bond. So the only people that are getting out once they're locked up is if ICE lets them out. So there's a thing called ICE bond and ICE parole, but that's extremely difficult to get, and it's kind of at the whim of what Stephen Miller is saying. So like right now, they're not allowed to let anyone out, so no one is being let out. So it's very difficult to get anyone out once they're locked up. But what I've observed also, and it's like this in most of legal issues, is that if you don't have an attorney, your outcome is not going to be as good. And what's happening in the immigration world is if you don't have an attorney, they're finding ways to just get you out of this, remove you from this country without any due process and as quickly as possible. So having an attorney makes ICE and the courts treat your client with more respect and with a more due process. So it's important sometimes to just be there for them, to say that they have an attorney, and that can go a long ways to protecting their rights. Even if you don't say a word or do anything, just signing up as their attorney can be a stopgap to them being removed rather rapidly. And I've seen it happen. I've had once I had a call at 6 p.m. My time from a client who was in New York, and he was about to board a plane. So they had completely circumvented everything. He had a master hearing coming up. They just put him on a plane. I tried to do an emergency filing at the last minute in New York, but nobody responded. He was flown out of the country. So these kinds of things happen regularly. So if you have an attorney, it happens less. But even then, they try. So it's a big help if you can sign on. So Steve, let me, if you could put up the PowerPoint, I'll kind of go through some of the steps to be able to help people. So everything, I mean, things are still done manually, I'm sure, but for the immigration cases that I've run across, I could not have done it without the electronic system that they've developed, the case access system, ECAS. And so you're going to see these acronyms, and this is what they stand for. The EOIR is the Executive Office for Immigration Review. It's the branch that runs the immigration courts and the appeals. So that's the EOIR, and ECAS is the electronic system that they developed so that you can manage and file things and know what's coming up, things like that. So next slide, please. So the first step is you want to get an ECAS account. So, and these are just practical steps, but it's important. I found it was kind of hard to just Google what to do. So I had to go through these steps. You want to gather all your identification and then create a e-registry profile, step 2, and you just go to eregistry.eoir.justice.gov, and it's pretty intuitive, and you start filling all that in. Next slide, please. You confirm your email, and then you have to go in person to your local court. So every city most big cities have an immigration court or one nearby. If you're far from one, this may be inconvenient, but it is an important step. You have to go to the court and show your identification. And so you don't necessarily have to schedule an appointment. You can often just go to the window and get it done. That's what I did. Next step, please. And then when you complete your in-person verification, and then you get a 7-digit EOR ID number, and then you can finish your setup. And then after that, you're set up. Next slide. And this system allows you to file electronically all of your documents, pleadings, evidence, things like that. And this is where you go. So in order to represent your client, you must fill out what's called a G28, which is like an attorney-client document. But in the EORI system, it's called the EOIR 28. 27 is for immigration appeals, so Board of Immigration Appeal. BIA appeals, you would fill out a EORI 27 to represent them, and a 28. So even if you've represented them through their whole case using the 28, when it comes time to do the appeal, you have to still fill out the 27 to represent them at the appeal level. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like when you go in. This will be kind of like your home screen. At the very top, you have your cases all there. You have hearings. If you click on hearings, then you'll get a calendar, and it'll give you a calendar of all your upcoming hearings. Uploads is where you can upload documents, evidence, things like that. Appearances that's where you go to do the EOIR 28. Next slide, please. So if you notice under appearances, on the right side, you'll see file EOIR 28 at the court. So when you click that, you'll go through a whole process of adding their name, their address, and then your name, your address, and a lot of your firm, your name, all that information will already be in the system because you are approved, and it'll autofill. It literally takes 30 seconds to fill one of these forms out. You hit click, and then within 24 hours, they accept it. You can see underneath submitted, accepted, and then when you go into cases, now their whole file will show up. Next slide, please. And when you go into their file, you will see, and I'm sorry, the letters are probably really small, but you'll see like their next court date, who the judge is going to be, the date and time, the location, and then on the bottom right, you'll see all the documents that have been uploaded, things like that. And this is where you go to upload documents. So you click upload documents, and then they give you a choice of what you're uploading. So it's very intuitive. It's not too hard to figure out. And they have a great helpline. So if you call, there's not a long wait, and the people are very helpful on how to use the system. So it's a good way to do the case management and to know what's happening. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's an important step so that you can then be able to represent your client. Now, in most cases, you're looking at a master hearing. And honestly, if you're going to be helping someone pro bono, at this stage, you really want to be helping people that you're probably going to be helping people that are in detention, because that's when people panic and they're looking for someone to help them. And so when they are put into detention, they will get a hearing date, and that's when you will be able to make an appearance and be able to help them. So I'm just going to go through one. There's so many different things so many different reasons why you can be in court to help your immigrant client, but we will just maybe handle the master hearing and the pleading stage for an asylee. And so next slide, please. The steps is that you want to, so people that have entered this country, when they're apprehended at the border, they're given a notice to appear. And the notice to appear documents their entry, who they are, when they were, where and when, all that kind of stuff. So you want to look at the NTA. On the next slide, I'm going to show you what the NTA looks like. But you want to check it for factual and legal accuracy because they might have the date wrong when they entered or the location wrong. You want to gather client identity. You want to talk to them about, do you have any criminal history? And, and then just try to determine what it is you're going to be, what kind of relief. Now, in almost every case, that's an asylum case, you have the option of filing for asylum. You can cancel the removal order, but that's a rare, very difficult thing to do right now, to get it canceled. And you can adjust that, so you want to discuss the different types of options that might be open to them. And then, okay, maybe could you go to the next slide, Steve? There is a notice to appear. This is what the notice to appear looks like. And this is all public record. And this is someone who, unfortunately, has left the country. But this, if you look at the notice to appear, you'll see where the Department of Homeland Security alleges that you are not a citizen or national of the United States, number one. Number two, you're a native of India, citizen of India. Three, you entered the United States at an unknown location on or about October 7th. You did not then possess or present a valid immigrant visa, entry permit, border identification, or other valid entry document. You were not then admitted or paroled after inspection by immigration officer. So this is the people that they're arresting right now. Even if they've managed to overcome the fact that they entered the border illegally and now they have a work authorization, they might even have an asylum application pending. ICE is picking these people up. If you enter the country illegally, they're picking you up. It doesn't matter where your status is right now, they're picking you up and they're putting you in detention. So this is what you're going to be able to find once you add the EOIR and you add yourself as their attorney. This will become visible to you going way back to when they first entered these documents. So look at the notice to appear, look at it closely, understand exactly when they entered, how they entered, things like that. Could we go back to the slide prior? So when you're at the master hearing, the first step is, they will know if you filed the EOIR 28, days in advance. You don't have to do this, but a lot of times you're going to be called in last minute. The master hearing is like a day that, I've had it where it's within hours. So you do the EOIR 28, and then you let the judge know that you have filed the EOIR 28, and then you want to confirm the interpreter language, make sure that they have an interpreter present, if that's what you want to do, if you want to make sure they understand. If we can go to the next slide after the notice to appear, Steve. And then what will happen is the judge will read the allegations, or summarize the charges. Now, you can waive the reading of the charges, and you'll get to the point where you just say, we waive. And you could even do that from the first get-go because it's in front of you in the NTA. Now, each factual allegation, admit, deny, or no contest. Over the years, there's been different strategies on how to handle that. Today, almost nobody fights the factual allegations because, as we just read, they entered illegally. They're from India. So all of these things are really not worth disputing because they're all factually true. So what we usually do is we don't deny. We admit to 1 to 5, 1 to 4, 1 to 5. We admit, okay. And because of that basis, the government is saying this alien is removable, And we don't deny that. We usually admit to removability. And then, and I'll tell you why. We're going to move on. And then step 4, then they're going to want to know, if your client is ordered removed, what country do they want to be removed to? Now, they're from India. They have a passport from India. They could easily go back home to India. But we usually say we decline to designate a country. The reason is because if they're filing for asylum, you don't want it on the record that they're willing to go back to India, right? Because then they could be used against them. They'll say, well, you're willing to go back to India. Well, no, you just asked me what country I would go back to, but they'll say, no, you must not really be afraid to go back to India. So as a matter of course, we just say we decline to state a country of removal, and then the judge, the government attorney, and the judge will then, the government attorney will say, well, we would like to ask India, and the judge will almost always say, yes, I designate India as a country of removal. But let them do it. We just always say we decline to state a country of removal. Next slide. And then they're going to say, so then what relief are you going to be seeking? And you just simply state the respondent will be seeking asylum, withholding, and CAT. And CAT stands for categories against torture. So there's different types of torture that they could be suffering from. And withholding is withholding of removal. So you're going to ask for withholding of removal. And asylum is the actual claim. So those are the 3 different options that you can that an alien can apply for to remain in the country. Asylum is the only pathway that eventually leads to permanent residency. Withholding and CAT does not lead to a green card, but it does lead to the government's not enforcing your removability. So in other words, they're going to withhold your removability and allow you to remain in America. But if you ever leave, you're never allowed back in, and you're kind of without status. They let you work. You usually have a work permit, but you're there's no pathway to citizenship with withholding and CAT. So you really want to win on the asylum, but you are basically telling the judge that you're going to try all 3 because you want to widen the net. You don't want to narrow your options. And then at that time, the judge will set a deadline for the final hearing, especially because your client is detained, and 99% of the time there's no way they're going to get out. And so they're making these cases faster. So within 3 months, they'll set a in-person final hearing for your client at this time. You can talk about different things at this point, but this is this is just procedural stuff. When is the next hearing? You may need more time. You might want to talk about bond, and they'll tell you why they can't give you bond, or sometimes you'll change the venue. Sometimes they will get out for whatever reason. They'll be able to get out. And if they're able to get out, then you want to do a change of venue because they may go to a completely different state and they don't want to go to that courtroom in Texas or Louisiana or California or wherever they were. So these are things that will happen. Next slide, please. And then you just basically confirm that you understand. Say thank you. Now, what I've noticed is the immigration judges, I believe they're not judges at the same level as criminal, civil judges, circuit court. They're more administrative. Their background is they were lawyers. They're appointed, and you can call them judge, your honor, and you treat them with the same respect that you would treat a judge, yeah, so you basically end the hearing at that point. Next slide, please. So you can also, and we used to do this a lot more often when they weren't locking up so many people and people were not even detained, but they had a master hearing coming up. You could file written pleadings. And if you filed the written pleadings in advance of the master hearing, a lot of times they would just cancel the master hearing because they would accept your pleadings. And I've got these pleadings here, and I've given a sample, a template of this to Steve for anyone who wants, because what this will do is it'll kind of give you also an idea what to verbally say in court. Nowadays, for everyone that's detained, I don't bother to do written pleadings. Because they're detained, they're going to appear in front of the judge. And so I noticed the few written pleadings I didn't matter. They still showed up at the master hearing. So now I don't do written pleadings. I just do verbal pleadings at the master hearing. But for people that are not detained, like this person wasn't detained, you want to do written pleadings so you can avoid having to go to court. This is one step that could be done with paper, and then they don't have to appear in court. So you can see, concedes the following allegations 1 through 4, and we don't deny anything. We admit the charge of removability, and if found removable, respondent declines to designate a country removal. So this is the kind of wording that you can do in front of the judge too. If you've never done it before and you're kind of worried about what to say, you can just basically, and then they'll ask you, well, what's the respondent gonna do? What is he gonna file? And we will pursue relief in the form of asylum, withholding of removal, and protection. And usually you just say withholding of removal and CAT. But you can say the full thing, but the judge, everyone understands if you just say and CAT, category against torture, convention against torture. And next slide, please. And then you can see the proof of service. So all of the documents need to have a cover page, which is shown, and then the proof of service. So the proof of service is you click by electronic service using ECAS. You can digitally sign it, and that's good enough. But this is very important, Dave, that you have the proof of service page. If you're filing a large group of documents, for example, evidence, and you have 30 pages, you want to put the proof of service right after page 1, right after the front page, so that they see it and not at the very end where they might not see and deny it. So without proper proof of service page, your documents could be denied as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. Is there any more slides? Steve? I guess not.
No more slides.
So,
sorry.
No more slides. All right. So those are sort of the steps that I can share with how you can get onboarded so that you can then help an immigration client, and then sort of just took you through pleading stage, which is usually the first stage of the master hearing. And if you can just help them through this stage, it makes a huge difference. It makes a big difference that you're there. I can tell you one time I got a call from a paralegal that I know, and he said, look, I have somebody in Louisiana, and he has a hearing in a few hours. Would you go? And I said, fine. And I got online, and there were 20 people on the docket, and there were, and he had me as a lawyer, and there was 2 other people that had attorneys. And basically what this whole group of people had been denied their credible fear interview. They had failed their credible fear interview. So they were all being removed all at once, and nobody had attorneys. But my guy had me, and I just argued that, and I talked to the mother, I talked to the family, that there were still death threats at home, that I believe that there is a credible fear. And if we can just show the evidence, the court will see that there actually is a valid asylum claim. The judge thought about it, and the judge says, okay, I'm going to overturn this and allow him to stay and fight his asylum case. The other 19 people were all removed. And so it does help. It makes a big difference. And I've come into court, a lot of these dockets, the majority of the people don't have attorneys, and attorneys are usually dealt with first. And so we can all leave. And then but I've come into the courtroom where they're finishing up the old docket, and there's people without representation. And I can tell you, they're not treated, it's just like a mill, and there's very little they can say, very little they can do, and they're just all removed. And so it does make a difference.
So question on that, Danny, the story you just mentioned, was that at a master calendar hearing? And I guess my question is, are you presenting evidence at a hearing like that, or you're just telling the judge, well, we do have evidence, we'd like to have an opportunity to present it at evidentiary type hearing.
Yeah, that's exactly all it was. It was like a master hearing. They just call it a master hearing, but it's like a generic term for a hearing. And on this particular day, the master hearing for all the people on the docket was they had all failed their credible fear interview. So the government was arguing to the judge, they failed, they entered illegally, let's remove them. And so yeah, there wasn't any opportunity to present evidence. It was a last minute thing. And you'll find that a lot of this in immigration court, it's kind of very arbitrary. It's very up to the whim of the judge. And so yeah, it's hard to explain, but if you do prepare, and that's the thing, when it comes time for the final asylum hearing, the final hearing, the merits hearing as it's called, if you prepare really well and present a strong case with evidence, everything's tabulated, and if you present a strong case, you can win. It's supposed to be like, it's not supposed to be 100% proof. If you can do 51% believable, and the respondent is a credible witness, you should be able to get asylum. So it's you want to present evidence and prepare, but for the master hearings, there's usually not a lot of evidence you can present.
I see. Well, and I don't know if you have other things to present or prepare or share with us here, but I have a couple questions, and I'm looking for any comments as well from those who are watching. We may have some come in. And just so is the client with you at the master calendar hearing, for example? They're there on WebEx as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, at their home, something not with you necessarily in your location.
Right. I mean, almost everybody I'm helping right now is detained. They're detained.
I see. So they're coming to you from the detention center. They're there. Judge is there. You're there. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And usually, what you have to do is you have to Google the detention center and find out where they're at. And there's so many private prisons now, so it's not one system for all the prisons. Like if GEO has their own system, and the state of Connecticut has their own system, and so they're just using prisons from all over. They're just they're mothballed prisons that have been closed for decades. They're reopening, and so the system is very unpredictable. But you want to find out how you can set up a Zoom appointment with your client, and then that's how you can in person talk to your client, and then the client can call. They can make multiple calls throughout the day. There's no restrictions on calls, it seems like. So you want to give them they'll reach out to you. And so a lot of times I see my phone, I know it's the Bureau of Prisons, and I always answer because I know it's going to be some client trying to call. And so, that's the way to communicate with them. And then a lot of times you need translators, so then it becomes difficult to even talk to them. So at the master hearing, you'll see in a window, they're usually where they're incarcerated, they'll be brought to a room with a camera. It's like a little phone booth type thing, and or it'll be a room full of people, and they'll come up to the front, and the camera is now on them.
Now, are you the one responsible for making sure they're there at the hearing, or does the government take care of that?
The government takes care of that. Yeah.
Got it.
And there's like a bailiff who reads out the list, and they'll tell the judge. And a lot of times when you come early, the judge is trying to determine who's there, who's not there, who has representation, which attorneys are here. They sort everything out. They let the attorneys go first.
Sure. Okay. And for those who, like myself, are not immigration attorneys, and we're thinking, okay, it sounds like maybe some of this is doable. We've all had our first day, in court at some point, probably during our time in practice, right? So we think, okay, we could maybe do some of this. I've also experienced where sometimes you can get in over your head, right? And you have to figure out, okay, how do I get more training so I can know what to do? Do you have any resources that you could recommend for those who, let's say, get down the road after the master calendar hearing and they're like, I need to know how to actually do the final hearing, I think that you mentioned, right? Or work on that. So what kind of training would you recommend, if off the top of your head here, for us?
Yeah, there's some, there are a lot of resources out there. So what I
Mm.
would recommend is finding, there are immigrant advocacy organizations in every city, right? They're nonprofits. They specialize in this. A lot of them advertise free legal clinics. If you connect with them, for example, there's an organization called NorCal Resist here in Sacramento area. NorCal
Mhm.
Resist helps refugees with immigration claims. And if you go to their office and you talk to them and you say you'd like to help people pro bono, but you don't know much about immigration law, they will help you. The immigration attorneys will reach out to you. They'll refer people to you. In the early days, I was calling, attorneys across the country, and they would pick up the phone and help. If they know that you're just there to help, and this is a new area for you, and you're there to help pro bono, there's a lot of help out there. What I can do is, there is another, um, there's a pretty good organization that I can recommend. National Immigration Project, I believe is what they're called, and you can find them online.
Okay.
They're good to. They have a lot of webinars, and they have a lot of recorded webinars. So if you it's like $200 a year or something like that. If you join, they have a really good forums as well where you can throw out questions, and other attorneys will help you. And so I would recommend them. But there's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah.
Also, that once you become the EO, once you register the the ECAS system, there is a practice manual, a EOIR practice manual that you can download, and
Okay.
that's all the procedures. So that's very helpful, and you want to follow that. You want to read
Sure.
that.
That is
Yes.
helpful. Okay. Well, good. Anything else, Danny, that you want to kind of share with us in this area? This has been really, I think, it's been interesting and informative. I appreciate you giving us this, kind of overview and some actually pretty detailed guidance there as well. Anything else that you'd like to, share at this point on this?
No, I mean, if I can do it, anybody can. It's not, rocket science, but it is like for me, I've always just mostly been a transactional attorney. I don't have much courtroom experience, so it was very difficult for me. I remember just going to court in San Francisco for the first time and just feeling completely scared and lost. But I got through it, and it's helpful because if you're not first, so you can see the other attorneys going before you, and they're there for the same reason, so you can kind of hear what they're saying,
Sure.
and you'll make mistakes, but it's okay. The the court is extremely respectful and friendly to you as an attorney, just like any court. You're one of the the team, even though you might be on the other team. So I found them to be very gracious, and you'll learn quick. It's not rocket science. It's fairly straightforward. And remember, you being there, even if you have no experience, is better for that client than if you weren't there. Sometimes it's just helpful. Like I've said to the judge, I'm not really familiar with what you're asking me. Can I have some time to research? And then they know that there's a lot of new attorneys coming into this these days because of the amount of work there is.
Well, and I was reading recently that I think some of the newer judges themselves are not necessarily required to even have been immigration attorneys. Uh,
It's
I,
pretty scary.
which
Yeah.
is interesting because my understanding of immigration law is that it's a fairly technical area of law, like bankruptcy, right? At least when you get into the weeds.
Yeah.
So, um, that does seem like there obviously is a learning curve here. We have had a couple questions here from our viewers. Are you comfortable with us sending out your PowerPoint that you use to those who request it? First of
Yeah.
all, okay.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
asking about that. Another question is coming in here that he says, "I am a lawyer, but not part of a law practice. Are there any malpractice or liability issues?" What would your answer be to that?
I mean, other than just kind of minimal professional liability coverage that I get through California Bar Association, third party, I don't. I mean, I'm a solo practice attorney myself, so I can totally relate to somebody like that. I'm not part of a large firm. I'm not part of a firm, period. And so I have minimal coverage. I mean, it's a good idea to have coverage. I think I'm covered for like 200,000 or something. So, and it's not that expensive to get. So, I mean, if you practice any kind of law at all, you probably should have some minimal coverage, even though it's not required in a state like California. So that's usually enough. The thing about immigration law that I've found is if you have and I don't want to sound negative, but in the immigration world, if you actually care about your client and you spend time, you stand out. The immigration world, that these immigrants, they can't sue you because if they lose, they're deported. So there's very little accountability. So um, it is not, if you're conscientious, you're a decent lawyer in whatever practice you're doing, and you're working for the best interest of your client, which is why you'd be doing something pro bono, right? I think you're going to be fine. You're doing the best you can, and again, some representation is better than none. I don't want to get too cynical here, but it's gotten to the point where almost everybody's losing their cases right now. And so it almost doesn't matter what you do, but you're there to provide some protection for due process for as long as possible until they're finally removed. But this current administration is using whatever they can to make it impossible for the judges to even rule in your favor, even if the evidence is there. It's a 2023 regulation that was passed under Biden called circumvention of lawful pathways. So if you entered the US between May 2023 and May 2025 illegally, which is like almost everybody, and you didn't use the one app, then you are automatically ineligible for asylum, no matter how strong your case. And so they're actually starting to use that now. And so you get to the end of the road, you have a strong case, you have all this evidence, you have eyewitness testimony, affidavits, you have government, you have police reports, everything, you have strong case. I mean, there's Afghanis with letters from generals and soldiers, and they're getting denied because of the circumvention of lawful pathways regulation that's in place right now. So that's being enforced. So it's extremely discouraging to have a really strong case and the judge tell you, my hands are tied, I can't grant asylum. So so most of the time, if it's definitely a credible case, they'll do withholding of removal and allow your client to stay in the country, but they haven't gotten asylum, which is key to getting permanent residency. And so that's happening right now. And so I don't know how someone needs to fight that all the way to a higher level court, but no one's fighting that because, again, the clients have no money. They're not around to appeal, often. So
I feel like this is one of those areas where these folks are truly the least of these, if you will, right? I mean, no power. And I have actually had people come to me, over the years, and I don't practice in the immigration area, but they'll tell me a horror story about how they paid somebody, sometimes thousands of dollars to represent them, and they just failed to do the basic representation. They didn't even show up. They filed something late and it wasn't sufficient or whatever. So I think you're to the question of, are there malpractice liability issues? I think what you're saying is, well, there might be, but no one's going to enforce that. No one's going to really, usually at least. I would also say, I know that some attorneys who work for, let's say, government agencies or, other types of in-house counsel types of situations who might have malpractice insurance within their job setting. What I've seen in some cases, at least, is that their employer or their malpractice from the employer will often allow them to do pro bono cases and be covered doing those pro bono cases. So you might want to check into that. Any of you who are watching who, don't have your own separate malpractice insurance for this type of thing, to see if that's an option. So, wow, good things here, Danny. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. And maybe, down the road, if you feel like there's another webinar you'd like to do on kind of, the next step in this process or something like that, we'd love to host that as well. There was something that I was going to say, but I'm not remembering what it was. Let me put my email back up. I know that some of you may be interested in volunteering at legal aid clinics. And we do usually do immigration because whenever I've done legal aid clinics in the past, immigration has been one of the most in-demand areas that we've seen there. We'll also do landlord-tenant clinics. Those are usually a big one. Family law, anyone who practices in that area, employment, labor law, probate, trust, those types of issues, and maybe even criminal expungements, that type of thing. So if any of our viewers are interested in just being a part of kind of our list of attorneys that we notify about upcoming clinics, you'd like to volunteer, shoot me an email there. You see it on the bottom of the screen, sallred@churchstate.org. Also, if your church in the Pacific Union Conference, which is in the states of California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Hawaii, are interested in hosting a legal aid clinic at your church, we can help you with facilitating that and advertising materials and kind of formats and that type of thing. So Danny, I know you've helped before with those. In fact, I think we're going out to Oakland here in November. So anyone want to join us, we'd love to have you at the Oakland Emmanuel Temple Church out there in Oakland, where we're doing a legal aid clinic out there. Let me see if any more comments have come in. Doesn't look like there are. All right, Danny. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and I think we'll sign off. I will have Danny's PowerPoint available for those who are interested, and also I think you sent a Word document with
the pleadings.
The pleadings.
Yeah, sample pleadings. Yeah.
Sample pleadings. That's helpful. Okay, Danny. I guess one other question I have is, are you okay with me sharing your email with folks if they have questions? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we won't put it out there on the website so you get millions of them, but there's a few folks who might be interested. And also, I mean, do you know of anybody right now who needs representation and can't afford it, hasn't been able to find an attorney that maybe you want to later on let us know, and we can connect with somebody who might be interested?
Yeah, I'll let you know, Steve. And yeah, I can definitely. Yeah.
And I guess the other question is, if someone here is interested in representing someone who's, up creek without a paddle here, right? How would they go about doing that with someone that's already detained, right? Would a family member, person usually contact and that type of thing? Is that what happens?
Usually family members are looking for help, and usually, and I think if we're talking about Adventists, where attorneys, maybe someone in your church just recently got picked up or something like that. Sure. You can offer to help until they find an immigration attorney specialist. And so then in that case, what you do is you do get on the ECAS system, do a EOIR 28. And once you do that, their entire file will become visible to you. So now you can see all the way from when they were first entered the country, and so you need their A number and their name. And with their A number and their name, you can add yourself as their attorney. You don't need their signature. It's all electronic. And now you can see their case, everything will show up. And that's critical to knowing what's really going on with them. So you start reading those documents. And even there, just being able to analyze the documents, and with an attorney's eye looking at those documents, you're going to know kind of what you're going to have some advice for them that they might not intuitively know themselves. And so it's just really helpful to be able to look at their file and then see when their next hearing is. And sometimes it's just helpful to file a continuance, so a motion for a continuance, so that you can get more time, so that they have more time to find an attorney, and so I can, Steve, I'll also give you a template for a motion of continuance. So sometimes it's just enough to add yourself as an attorney and do a motion of continuance to buy them time. And if you can even do that for them, and if you even have, for example, there's a person here in Sacramento who did not have an attorney, and he is an Afghani. And one day, a few weeks ago, they put an ankle bracelet on him. And a bunch of attorneys told him, people told him, if you had an attorney listed, they would have thought twice about putting an ankle bracelet on you. I don't know if that's true, but just being listed as an attorney helps that alien. to have
Interesting.
better
Yeah.
outcomes sometimes.
Yeah. It's because I feel like on the civil court side of things, oftentimes pro per clients are treated more carefully sometimes than those who are
Yeah.
represented, you
Yeah,
know?
that's true.
'Cause
It's the
I've
opposite. It's the opposite. Yeah, no, I've experienced that too.
yeah.
But and even in like the religious worker visa world, if a church files themselves, they're treated with more grace than if an attorney files on behalf of a church. So
Okay.
in the immigration world, yeah, sometimes applications are treated more favorably if you're attempting it as the actual, person needing the visa, as opposed to an attorney doing it for you. But no, not in the world of
Removal.
of aliens removal that are under removal proceedings. It really
Okay.
makes a difference if they
Got
know
it.
that you have a lawyer.
Yeah. So just showing up essentially for them and being
Yes.
there can make a big difference. And I think it would be yeah, it's helpful. I think that folks should check out the different organizations you recommended there. I know I will if I choose to go forward with this because I'm cautious about getting in over my head, right? I think everyone who any attorney who's practicing in a new area is like, wait, I need a mentor, I need something. So I think it'd be helpful, and perhaps even we can try to I know there are several immigration attorneys within the Advocacy community that I have been sending people to, including yourself, that might be able to be a resource for those, in certain situations. Hey, what do I do now? Right.
Right.
Well, good, Danny. Let's wrap it up here with a prayer. And I know folks are making comments here that they really appreciate the presentation. So, Danny, thank you for again taking the time out of another volunteer thing that you are doing, which I appreciate that ministry, life and health as well, to teach us here and to just give us this primer in this area. Danny, would you lead us in a word of prayer?
Sure.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you for your love and how much you advocate for us to the Father, and how you've been there for us, blessed us no matter what, given us more than we deserve. And Lord, as we look at the world around us right now and all the craziness that's going on, there's so many people that need our help. And Lord, I just pray that each and every person that's listening, that you speak to us and speak to our hearts and how we can help. Lord, trying something new or something that we're not familiar with is very difficult. But Lord, you've given us talents and abilities and licenses to help in areas that not everyone can. And so, Lord, just touch our hearts, show us how we can help, open the doors, open the way, and just be with us. There's someone out there that can use our help, that you can connect us to. And Lord, I just pray that for everyone here that has that willing heart, that you will provide that, that you'll give that opportunity as you see fit. And Lord, give us the wisdom and the ability, Lord, to help these people. But ultimately, Lord, I just pray that you will help us to be a strong witness for your love and your character to the people around us that need our help. So I thank you, Lord, and thank you for all that you do for us. And I pray that some people here will be a great blessing, lead and guide us all. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Danny. I will say to our viewers that we are going to be applying for CLE credit with the California State Bar for this presentation. That was supposed to happen before, but since the switcheroo here in the presenters, we've had a little bit of a delay in that, but we'll work on that. We can do it after the fact, and so we will communicate with those of you who are here, or actually all those who registered, if that is successful. So I assume it will be. Anyway, Danny, again, thank you, and God bless you in your work, and thank you all to everyone who joined us, and God bless you guys. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.